Welcome, dear friend, as we continue this gentle passage together. Tonight we step once more into a stream of quiet wisdom, carefully carried across centuries, meant to calm the restless mind and guide you into deep, nourishing rest. If you wish, you may notice the hour and the place from which you are listening, and simply let that awareness soften. I will be offering you a thoughtfully gathered series of ancient reflections and timeless Buddhist stories, shaped to open the most peaceful spaces within your awareness and invite a sense of emotional release. Each story holds a subtle teaching, powerful yet tender, capable of easing anxiety, loosening persistent worries, and dissolving the endless search for approval outside yourself. These are not stories meant only to help you fall asleep. They are quiet transmissions, passed down by those who understood a truth often overlooked, that lasting peace does not come from rearranging the world around us, but from gently transforming how we see it. As the poet Rumi once whispered, "When you grow quiet, you begin to hear everything." As we move through this journey, you will begin to sense how these ancient understandings can slowly reshape your experience of life itself. As each tale unfolds, a subtle change may arise within you. The tension of daily concerns can begin to loosen. The steady buzz of thought may gradually fade into the background. Without effort, you may find yourself drifting into a space of deep understanding and enduring calm. So allow yourself now to fully settle. Let your body rest into whatever is supporting it. Take one slow, intentional breath with me. And as you breathe out, trust that you are about to receive insights that have been quietly waiting for you across countless ages. Our first story opens a doorway into the mystery of identity. It is known as the story of the monk who no longer remembered his name. One day, Master Dogen was walking along a narrow mountain trail when he noticed an aged monk seated beneath a towering pine. The traveler's robes were worn and mended many times, and his eyes reflected the stillness that only long devotion can cultivate. Drawn by curiosity and respect, Dogen approached and offered a traditional greeting. "Good morning, brother," he said. "I am Dogen of Ihi Temple. May I ask your name?" The monk lifted his gaze, smiled gently, and after a long pause replied, "Master, I seem to have forgotten it entirely." Dogen was surprised. "How could you forget something so essential? A name follows us from birth." The wandering monk laughed softly. "For 30 years I have walked these paths, sat in silence, and served whoever appeared before me. I have been so occupied with living that I never found time to remember what to call it. When I awaken, I am simply awareness awakening. When I assist another, I am compassion moving. When I sit, I am presence resting as itself. Why would I need a name?" Something shifted in Dogen, as if a hidden door had quietly opened. "But surely," he said, "you must refer to yourself somehow." "The birds know me by the sound of my steps," the monk replied. "The villagers know me by kindness. The mountains know me by my gratitude. Each moment offers all the identity that is required." He gestured toward the pine above them. "Does this tree suffer because it does not know its name? Does the stream hesitate because it lacks a title as it flows toward the sea?" Understanding rose in Dogen like dawn touching the peaks. He bowed deeply. "You have found what many seek their entire lives. You discovered who you are by letting go of who you thought you should be." The nameless monk returned the bow. "And you, Master, have seen this truth. Perhaps we are both nearer to our original nature than we believe. The Buddha once taught, "You are not your name, your body, or your thoughts. You are the awareness in which they appear." From this story emerges a quiet teaching about the difference between our true nature and the identities we construct. Why do we cling so tightly to titles, roles, and definitions of self? In Zen understanding, the ego seeks stability through labels. We attach ourselves to being a parent, a worker, a success. These forms provide comfort, yet they also form invisible walls. Notice how much energy is spent protecting these images, at work, at home, among friends. Anxiety often appears when these identities feel threatened. This is the ego's fear of dissolving, its unease at what may exist beneath all those layers. The nameless monk embodies what Zen calls the original face, the self that exists before stories arise. This is not emptiness, but a living awareness that naturally expresses wisdom and compassion without needing definition. As Zen master Huangbo taught, the ordinary mind is the way. The more we chase special identities, even spiritual ones, the further we drift from simplicity. In Japanese tradition, there is the idea of mushin, no mind. Not absence, but such complete presence that self-consciousness falls away. Like a skilled calligrapher whose hand moves without hesitation, the monk lives without the friction of self-reference. Modern science echoes this insight, revealing that the sense of a fixed self is a mental construction, useful yet not absolute. Suffering arises when we try to protect what is only a collection of memories and thoughts. The Buddha said, "At the end, only three things matter: how fully you lived, how deeply you loved, and how completely you let go." None of these require a name. Now, as you rest in the quiet night, can you notice the awareness watching your thoughts without being bound by them? Can you feel life moving through you without claiming ownership? What if you are simply presence, gently experiencing this human moment? As the Buddha taught, when nothing is lacking, the whole world is yours. By forgetting the name, the truth is remembered. By releasing identity, the freedom that has always been here quietly reveals itself. The tea master and the empty cup. Let us gently continue, turning now toward a story that illuminates the fleeting nature of even the most treasured things. This is the teaching of the tea master's empty cup. Master Yamamoto was widely respected for his refined tea ceremonies. Every gesture of his hands reflected a lifetime of quiet discipline, and his tea utensils were spoken of with admiration far beyond his village. Among all his possessions, one stood above the rest, an ancient porcelain cup, thin as a breath, painted with cherry blossoms that seemed to sway softly when touched by light. This cup had been entrusted to 15 generations of tea masters, each caretaker adding reverence, care, and silent gratitude to its long journey. One crisp autumn morning, Yamamoto set out to visit Zen master Bankai. He had heard of Bankai's deep clarity and hoped to share tea with him, perhaps to receive guidance on the deeper spirit of the tea path. He carried the cherished cup wrapped carefully in silk, holding it as one might hold a living memory. Bankai welcomed him into his humble hut with warmth and simplicity. "Please," Yamamoto said respectfully, unwrapping the cup with ceremonial care, "let us share tea together. This cup has served the way for 400 years. Each sip connects us with those who walked this path before us." As he lifted the cup to reveal its beauty, something subtle shifted. Whether from tension, fate, or the natural unfolding of all things, the cup slipped from his hands. Time seemed to slow as it fell, then shattered upon the stone floor with a clear, ringing sound, like a small bell breaking open. Yamamoto cried out and fell to his knees. Tears streamed freely as grief overtook him. "Master Bankai, forgive me. This cup survived wars, earthquakes, and centuries of care, only to be destroyed by my carelessness. 400 years, gone in a single instant." Bankai calmly bent down and lifted one of the larger fragments. He turned it slowly in his hands, studying its texture with quiet curiosity. Then he asked softly, "Tell me, my friend, how old is this piece of clay?" Yamamoto looked up, confused through his tears. "This clay," Bankai continued gently, "before it was shaped, before it met the fire of the kiln, before the blossoms were painted upon it, how old was it then?" Yamamoto gazed at the shard resting in Bankai's palm. Slowly, a new understanding began to emerge. "The clay existed long before the potter," he said. "It came from the earth itself." "And how old is the earth?" Bankai asked. "Countless ages," Yamamoto whispered. "And when this cup returns to dust, as all forms must," Bankai continued, "how old will that dust be?" Yamamoto felt his tears cease. A lightness spread through his chest. "Clay has no age," he said quietly. "It simply becomes clay again. These elements will become many other forms, mountains, rivers, flowers, perhaps other cups." Bankai smiled and placed the fragment gently on the ground. "Now you see the true meaning of inheritance. What is passed down is not the temporary form, but the appreciation of transformation itself. The 400 years of tea ceremony live on through you, not through an object." Yamamoto began to laugh, first softly, then with sincere joy. "I was so focused on protecting the past that I forgot to be present with this moment. The cup fulfilled its final teaching perfectly." "Indeed," Bankai said calmly. "Now, shall we drink tea? I have a simple cup that would be honored to serve. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When this is seen with wisdom, sorrow loosens its grip. At the heart of this story lies our relationship with attachment, and the deep peace that arises when we accept the changing nature of all things. Why does suffering arise so sharply when treasured objects break, relationships end, or circumstances shift? Zen points to a quiet misunderstanding. We believe permanence can be secured, that happiness depends on keeping life unchanged. From this belief arises dukkha, the pain of grasping what cannot be held. We attach not only to objects, but to people, roles, memories, achievements, and even moments of peace, hoping they will last. When change inevitably arrives, we feel the shock of unmet expectation. Yet consider how much of that pain comes not from loss itself, but from the meaning we assign to it. Yamamoto's grief was born from the belief that something irreplaceable had vanished. Bankai's teaching revealed a deeper truth. Nothing is ever truly lost, because nothing was ever separate. The elements of the cup existed before its form and continue afterward. This is not consolation. It is recognition of interbeing, the web of connection in which all things arise and dissolve. As Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, all things exist through relationship. The cup was never only a cup, but a gathering of earth, water, fire, air, and human care. When it broke, nothing disappeared. The elements simply open themselves to new possibilities. When this is understood, impermanence becomes wonder rather than fear. The broken cup becomes a teacher. The ending becomes an opening. Zen speaks of mano-no-aware, a tender awareness of transience. Not sadness, but a gentle appreciation that deepens love. Cherry blossoms are precious because they fall. The Buddha said, "Attachment is the root of suffering." This does not mean closing the heart. True non-attachment is deeper love, gratitude without possession, care without demand, presence without fear of loss. Tonight, as you rest, notice where you are holding too tightly. Remember the clay returning to clay. Can you cherish fully while holding lightly? Can you receive this moment as a gift without asking it to stay? As the Buddha taught, all things arise and pass away. In knowing this, the heart learns how to rest. There is no gentle peace discovered until one learns to pass through the ache of birth and fading, of holding and releasing. When impermanence is truly welcomed, a quiet peace appears, one that does not rely on anything staying the same. As our path through Zen wisdom continues, we now arrive at a story that reveals the subtle balance between effort and surrender. This is the story of the student who could not remain still. Young monk Jishin had lived at the monastery for 3 months, and his restlessness during meditation had become well known among the community. Each morning during zazen, while the other monks sat like unmoving stones, silent, steady, and composed, Jishin seemed unable to settle. His hands tugged at his robe, his shoulders shifted, his legs adjusted again and again. He scratched an itch, straightened his back, then leaned forward as if searching for something misplaced. His breath was shallow and uneven, carrying the sound of quiet frustration. Eventually, he would rise, bow apologetically, and pace slowly at the back of the hall. During work periods, whispers followed him. Some students felt compassion, others irritation, and a few quietly judged him as lacking dedication. Yet Master Ryoan, the abbot of the temple, observed Jishin with calm attentiveness, offering no comment for many weeks. One cool morning, after yet another unsuccessful attempt at sitting, Jishin approached his teacher. His eyes were wet with discouragement. "Master," he said softly, "perhaps I am not meant for this path. I cannot find even a single moment of stillness. Maybe I should return to my family's fields." Ryoan looked at him with warmth. "Jishin," he replied, "I have a different task for you. Our garden has been neglected. Weeds have taken over, and the paths are unclear. Will you tend to it?" Relieved to be of use, Jishin bowed deeply. "Yes, Master. I would be grateful." The next morning, instead of entering the meditation hall, Jishin walked into the overgrown garden. He knelt among the plants, pulling weeds slowly, feeling the cool soil against his hands. As he worked, he noticed which leaves drooped with thirst and which plants leaned too long in shadow. When rain arrived, he rested beneath the shed, listening to the gentle drumming on the roof. When the sun burned bright, he adjusted his pace, pausing when his body asked for rest. Days turned into weeks. Jishin began waking before dawn, eager to meet the garden in the quiet light. He learned the language of the plants, the curl of a leaf, the timing of care, the rhythm of growth and decline. His movement softened, becoming simple and efficient, guided by the needs before him rather than by force or impatience. One afternoon, while harvesting ripe tomatoes, Jishin suddenly realized he had been kneeling without movement for a long time, fully absorbed. His mind was calm, his breath steady, his body at ease. When he stood, there was no familiar tightness, no urge to escape his own stillness. That evening, drawn by a quiet inner pull, Jishin entered the meditation hall and took his seat. To his surprise, his body settled naturally. His breath deepened. His mind, trained by attentive work, rested easily in the present. For the first time since arriving, he sat through the entire period without shifting. Later, a student asked Master Ryoan, "How did working in the garden teach him to meditate?" Ryoan smiled, brushing soil from his fingers. "I did not teach him meditation. I taught him how to stop struggling with himself. In the garden, he learned to move with conditions instead of resisting them. He learned the rhythm of effort and rest. Sitting follows the same way." "But why could he not learn this directly?" the student asked. "Because," Ryoan replied, "his mind needed to experience surrender through movement before it could discover surrender in stillness. True effort flows with life, it does not push against it." Some learn peace by sitting. Others learn stillness by moving peacefully. As the Buddha said, just as the ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, this teaching has one taste, the taste of freedom. This story reveals that true practice cannot be forced by sheer will. Much of our difficulty arises from what Zen calls the gaining mind, the desire to achieve awakening as a possession. We approach meditation like a battle, trying to dominate thoughts and restrain energy. This creates inner conflict. One part demands calm, while another resists control. The more pressure we apply, the more agitation grows. Look gently at your own practice. Notice the subtle harshness of demanding your mind be different. Observe the disappointment when meditation does not meet expectations, the quiet judgment when distraction appears. These are signs of resistance, not wisdom. Jishin's change came through right effort, not strain, but alignment. In the garden, presence arose naturally through care and attention. This was not forced mindfulness, but intimacy with life as it unfolded. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi once said, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." Jishin did not need to become someone else. He needed to discover how his own nature could rest within the practice. The garden became his meditation hall because it met him where he was, guiding restless energy gently toward awakening. And now, as your own body rests and the night deepens, allow yourself the same kindness. There is nothing to force, nothing to conquer. Peace arrives when effort softens into harmony, and the heart learns how to stop pushing against itself. The very same current of energy that once made sitting practice feel impossible later became the strength that allowed him to tend the garden with care, and in time, to sit in meditation with ease. What once appeared as an obstacle slowly revealed itself as a gift. This points toward an essential understanding within Zen. There are as many gateways to presence as there are human hearts. Some are naturally drawn to silent sitting, others to walking, chanting, acts of service, or mindful work with the hands. The question is never about finding the single correct practice. It is about discovering how your own nature can most honestly embody the timeless qualities of awareness, compassion, and wisdom. The Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh spoke often of engaged Buddhism, the insight that washing dishes, caring for children, sweeping floors, or tending gardens can carry the same depth as formal meditation when approached with full attention. Jishin's journey reflects this truth clearly. His awakening did not arise from mastering a technique, but from learning the attitude that allows all practice to blossom, gentle cooperation with reality as it is. The Buddha taught, hatred is never ended by hatred. By non-hatred alone is hatred ended. This is an ancient law. This wisdom applies not only to conflicts with others, but also to the quiet struggle within our own minds. When we fight restlessness with force, agitation multiplies. When we meet the mind patiently, learning its rhythms and limits, true change becomes possible. Take a moment to reflect on places in your own life where you may be struggling against yourself. Perhaps you try to push away certain emotions, attempting to crush anxiety or silence anger through willpower alone. Or maybe you dismiss your creative impulses as distractions, unworthy of serious attention. What if these energies are not enemies, but untapped allies, waiting to be guided rather than erased? Zen ultimately teaches that awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about fully inhabiting who you already are beneath habit and resistance. Jishin's restlessness was never the true problem. The suffering arose because that energy had nowhere to flow. Tonight, as you rest, notice where you may be opposing your own nature. Can you imagine a kinder way of working with what you find there? Perhaps a sharp, analytical mind could become devotion through study. Perhaps deep sensitivity could soften into compassion. What parts of yourself are you trying to eliminate when they may only be asking for a wiser expression? The Buddha reminded us, you yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and care. Authentic practice begins with this gentle acceptance, not approval of every action, but a willingness to begin exactly where you are, without violence toward yourself. And now, let us drift into another Zen story, one that reveals how wisdom sometimes appears through the most unexpected doorways. This is the story of the master who sold enlightenment. In the busy marketplace of ancient Kyoto, among stalls of rice, silk, and earthenware, an unusual sight appeared one morning. A finely dressed man had set up a small stand with a bold banner that read, "Enlightenment for sale. 1 gold coin only. Instant liberation guaranteed." A crowd gathered. Some laughed openly. Others paused, curious what enlightenment might look like when offered as a commodity. The man behind the stall was clearly no true practitioner. His robes were costly but worn incorrectly. His gestures were exaggerated, his voice theatrical, and his eyes darted with the alertness of someone used to vanishing quickly. He called out to passers-by, "Why spend years in meditation? Why struggle through discipline? For 1 coin, you may have what monks seek for lifetimes." Most people shook their heads and moved on. But as the morning wore on, a familiar figure approached. Master Ikkyu, known throughout the land for his sharp insight and unconventional ways, stopped before the stall and studied the banner carefully. 1 gold coin for enlightenment? Ikkyu asked, stroking his beard. "Yes, venerable master," the seller replied eagerly. "The very same enlightenment that usually takes decades. Mine is immediate." To the astonishment of everyone, including the seller himself, Ikkyu reached into his robe and produced a gold coin. "An excellent price," he said calmly, placing it on the counter. "I will take 1 enlightenment." The crowd leaned in. The seller froze. He had never imagined anyone would actually pay, least of all a real Zen master. Panic flickered across his face as he searched his belongings for something, anything, to hand over. At last, his fingers closed around a small mirror he used for grooming. Desperate, he presented it solemnly. "Here is your enlightenment," he declared. "Look deeply and truth will be revealed." Ikkyu accepted the mirror with reverence and gazed into it. For a long moment he studied his reflection, his lined face, his bright eyes, the hint of a smile forming at the corners of his mouth. Then suddenly he burst into joyful laughter. "Wonderful!" he exclaimed, lifting the mirror toward the sky. "Worth every coin. This is the most direct teaching I've encountered in years." The crowd murmured in confusion. The seller, encouraged by what seemed like praise, straightened proudly. "Master," he said, "what great wisdom have you discovered?" Ikkyu laughed even harder. "I have learned that a fool and his money are easily parted, and today I am that fool." Tears of laughter ran down his cheeks. "For 1 coin, this man has shown me my own face and reminded me that enlightenment cannot be bought, sold, or owned." Understanding rippled through the crowd. Ikkyu bowed deeply to the seller. "Thank you, my friend, for this perfect lesson, wisdom appearing through foolishness." He set the mirror down gently and walked away, still chuckling. The seller stood motionless, staring at the coin in his hand and the mirror on the stall. Something had shifted within him. Watching a true master find truth in what he knew was deception cracked open a long-hidden emptiness in his heart. For the first time in many years, he felt genuine shame, not at being exposed, but at the hollowness that had driven him there. Years later, that same man could be found quietly sweeping the floors of Ikkyu's temple, having become one of his most devoted students. When asked how his life had changed, he would smile softly and say, "Master Ikkyu bought my enlightenment, and then gave it back to me for free." And as this story settles into silence, allow your own breath to slow, your thoughts to soften, and your body to rest, knowing that the deepest teachings often arrive when we least expect them, and ask nothing from us but simple awareness. "I finally understood," the man would later say, "that what I tried to sell was never mine, and what I tried to buy had always been with me." The Buddha spoke to this same truth when he said, "3 things cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth." Here we touch a quiet and profound teaching. Wisdom often arrives through unlikely forms, and genuine understanding cannot be packaged, traded, or handed from one person to another. It can only be recognized within. Why, then, are we so easily drawn to the idea that awakening can be obtained from outside ourselves? Zen Buddhism points to our deep habit of transactional thinking. We are trained to believe that realization works like commerce, that with enough effort, devotion, or money, we can purchase certainty and peace. This gaining mind treats awakening as something missing, something to be acquired, rather than as our original nature, temporarily veiled by habits and fear. Notice how subtly this pattern appears in your own seeking. We search for the perfect technique, the ideal book, the most realized teacher, hoping the right external combination will unlock inner freedom. While teachings and guides can support the path, the decisive shift always occurs in recognition, not acquisition. The charlatan's mirror offered what many elaborate methods overlook: direct contact with what is already present. Ikkyu saw nothing new in that reflection. Yet in truly seeing what had always been there, the ordinary revealed itself as extraordinary. This is what Zen calls the original face, not a special state, but the simple awareness that exists before striving begins. An even deeper lesson shines through Ikue's response. Instead of anger or humiliation, he laughed. He delighted in seeing his own foolishness clearly. This is what Suzuki Roshi called "don't know mind," a willingness to be surprised, to learn from mistakes, and to find wisdom even where we least expect it. Reflect gently on your own spiritual journey. How much energy has gone into searching for what you believe is missing? Can you feel the difference between sincere learning and restless grasping? Ikue's story suggests that awakening often comes not through getting what we want, but through seeing the futility of trying to possess what was never absent. Zen master Linji once said, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." These shocking words point to the same insight. Enlightenment cannot be received from outside, not even from the most perfect teacher. Any authority that claims to own what we lack is quietly turning us away from our own innate clarity. The charlatan's later transformation reveals yet another layer. Years of pretending to sell enlightenment prepared him, unknowingly, to recognize it when it appeared freely. Even misused teachings can become fertile ground once sincerity awakens. As the Buddha taught, the wise are known by what they encourage, what they discourage, and what they overlook. Ikue's wisdom lay not in avoiding deception, but in discovering truth within it. He encouraged the offering by accepting it, discouraged attachment by laughing at himself, and overlooked the fraud by honoring the unintended teaching. Tonight, as you reflect on your path, can you appreciate the unexpected teachers who have appeared? Perhaps someone you once dismissed carried a lesson more honest than polished words. What would it be like to meet tomorrow with Ikue's openness, to find wisdom hidden in plain sight? The Buddha said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." When we see that awakening cannot be bought or sold, we discover it has always been freely available, reflected in whatever mirror happens to be before us. Now, let us continue with another Zen story, one that shows how what appears broken may sometimes serve more clearly than what appears whole. This is the story of the monastery bell that would not ring. High in the mountains of rural Japan stood Shunryu Temple, which had served nearby villages for more than 300 years. Its great bronze bell, cast by master artisans long ago, had called generations of monks and villagers to morning sitting and evening reflection. Its deep tone once rolled across valleys, marking time and offering comfort to all who heard it. One winter, after a fierce storm, a crack appeared in the bell. When struck, it no longer sang. It produced only a dull, muted sound, unable to travel beyond the temple grounds. The monks were troubled. How could they invite others to practice without the bell's far-reaching voice? Master Sengai, the elderly abbot, examined the damage. Repair would require transporting the bell to a distant city at great cost. Determined, the monks began saving. Villagers contributed small offerings, and after many weeks, enough gold was gathered. They presented it proudly to their teacher. But the very next day, a family arrived at the temple gates, parents and 3 small children fleeing famine. They were thin, exhausted, and frightened. Master Sengai welcomed them without hesitation and used the bell fund to buy food, warm clothing, and supplies for their journey. The monks felt disappointment but remained silent. They began saving again. 2 months later, the fund was restored. That same week, a wandering monk arrived, gravely ill. Once again, Master Sengai used the money for medicine and care. When it happened a third time, this time helping a family whose home had burned. The monks could no longer remain silent. "Master," the head monk said respectfully, "how can we call people to practice without a proper bell? Our duty feels incomplete." Sengai listened quietly. That evening, he struck the cracked bell at the usual hour. Its dull sound echoed weakly. Yet something unexpected occurred. Instead of a few familiar villagers, dozens of people appeared on the mountain path, climbing toward the temple at dusk. Word had spread of a temple where no traveler was turned away, where the sick were tended, where the bell fund always seemed to serve those most in need. People came not because they heard bronze ringing across the valleys, but because they heard compassion moving through the world. As the meditation hall filled beyond anything they had known, Master Sengai smiled. "Sometimes," he said gently, "a broken bell calls more clearly than a perfect one. Our bell cannot reach distant ears, but our actions have reached distant hearts. Which call do you think the Buddha would answer?" The head monk bowed deeply. "We focused on the form of calling and forgot its essence." "Yes," Sengai replied. "A perfect bell announces the time to meditate. A broken bell that feeds the hungry announces the Dharma itself." The bell was never repaired. It still hangs in Shunryu Temple, sounding softly, imperfectly. Visitors often remark on its dull tone, and the monks smile as they share how brokenness became their greatest teaching. An old Buddhist saying asks, "When you can do nothing, what can you do?" This story reminds us that our limitations often become doorways, openings through which our deepest values can finally speak, clearly and without effort, into the quiet night. Why do we quietly believe that what is damaged must first be repaired before it can be meaningful? Zen teachings invite us to notice this hidden habit of the mind. The subtle conviction that only when circumstances are flawless can wisdom truly appear. So we wait. We postpone kindness until life feels stable. We delay generosity until resources seem abundant. We withhold love until we believe ourselves complete. And in this waiting, moments meant for awakening drift past like clouds unseen. How often do you pause your own giving because the timing feels imperfect? Perhaps you tell yourself you will help others once you feel more secure. You may hold back your creativity until it feels refined enough to share. Or you delay inner practice, waiting for silence, comfort, or the right conditions. Yet Master Sengai's story gently suggests something different. That compassionate action, offered from exactly where we stand, often carries a deeper power than actions delayed by perfection. In Buddhist understanding, this is known as skillful response. Not clinging to ideal forms, but meeting reality as it is. When the bell could no longer perform its expected role, another calling revealed itself. A quieter call, yet one that reached further than sound ever could. Limitation became the doorway, not the obstacle. This reflects a profound truth of practice. What we struggle against may be what shapes us most deeply. The difficulty that seems to block our progress may be the very teacher refining our awareness. A practitioner who cannot still the mind may grow extraordinary patience. Someone without time for retreat may discover mindfulness woven into daily care. In this way, the path adapts to life, not the other way around. Vietnamese Zen wisdom speaks of interbeing, the understanding that awakening does not happen in isolation. It unfolds through relationship, through care, through shared humanity. Master Sengai embodied this knowing. To mend the bell would have restored appearance. To feed the hungry restored dignity. One served tradition, the other served truth. Notice how the temple did not diminish when the bell remained cracked. Its influence expanded. No longer dependent on ritual sound, it became known for living compassion. People arrived not because they were summoned, but because they felt seen. The temple became a refuge not of form, but of presence. Zen sometimes speaks of paradox, that the greatest strength may emerge through surrender, that usefulness does not require perfection. The monks initially saw only loss. Their teachers saw opportunity, an invitation to express the Dharma not as ceremony, but as response. The Buddha taught that generosity carries joy at every stage. In the intention, in the giving, and even in the memory of having given. Each time Master Sengai chose care over restoration, this joy quietly unfolded. Not loud, not celebrated, simply lived. Now gently turn inward. Where are the cracks in your own life? The places where things do not function as you wish. Perhaps a physical limitation that asks you to move more slowly. A financial boundary that teaches simplicity. A relationship strain that softens the heart. A path that changed direction without permission. What if these are not flaws, but invitations? Gateways into deeper service. Ways your life learns how to touch others more honestly. Often it is our unfinished places that allow connection. Our struggles become bridges, not barriers. Communities are rarely transformed by flawless examples. They are moved by sincerity, by effort that shows up despite imperfection, by compassion that does not wait to be polished. The temple's quiet acts spoke louder than any bell ever had. A Zen teacher once said, "We will fail. What matters is how we respond." Master Sengai's response was neither denial nor repair alone. It was listening to what wanted to arise through circumstance. Modern understanding echoes ancient insight. Those who have suffered often become the most generous. Those who have broken often become healers. Wounds, when met with awareness, turn outward as wisdom. What once hurt becomes what helps. The cracked bell still hangs in the temple. Its muted sound carries a message without words. That usefulness is not measured by perfection. That service does not require completion. That life can sing even when the note is uneven. So tonight, as your body softens into rest, consider this gently. What part of you feels unfinished? And what kindness might be waiting there to move through you? The Buddha reminded us that light is not diminished when shared. One flame can awaken thousands. Master Sengai understood that a fractured bell could ignite countless moments of compassion. A call deeper than sound. A music shaped by humanity. In embracing our imperfections, we sometimes discover that what is broken is not silent at all. It speaks softly. It teaches quietly. And it serves completely. Let us now move into the next story, one that reveals the unseen weights we carry and how releasing them becomes an act of freedom. This is known as the story of the empty pack. In a quiet monastery garden, where the morning air rested gently on stone paths and leaves shimmered with dew, a young wanderer approached his teacher. His posture was respectful, yet his eyes carried a weight that words alone could not explain. "Master," he spoke softly, "I wish to understand my life more clearly. Why do my memories follow me wherever I go? Why do the past moments return again and again, even when I wish to move forward?" The teacher did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward a winding structure made of sheer silk panels. glowing faintly in the filtered sunlight. Then he reached for a worn backpack and placed it into the young man's hands. "Walk into the maze," the master said calmly. "Carry this with you. It will help you remain attentive. But be mindful. It is heavier than it appears." At first, the young man was surprised by how simple the pack looked. Yet the moment its straps settled onto his shoulders, his breath caught. The weight pressed downward with unexpected force, bending his body forward as he stepped into the maze. Inside, the paths narrowed. Walls of silk blocked his way again and again. Through the translucent fabric, he could see others moving along different routes, their forms distant and unclear. No matter where he turned, progress seemed impossible. His legs trembled. His shoulders burned. He sat down, overwhelmed by fatigue and doubt. "They are moving faster than I am," he thought. "Perhaps I should slip beneath the barrier. Perhaps there is a shortcut." But something deeper restrained him. He chose honesty over escape. And as he stood, a passage quietly opened before him. He walked again until another wall stopped him. This time, patience brought no relief. The pack felt heavier than before, digging into his shoulders. Confused, he removed it and opened it carefully. Inside, there was nothing. No stones. No tools. No weight at all. Yet when he lifted it again, the burden remained. Then a gentle voice arose, not from outside, but from within. "Look inward," it whispered. "The weight you feel does not belong to the bag." Suddenly, memories surfaced. Moments of rejection. Old wounds. Resentments carried silently through the years. With each remembered pain, the pack seemed to grow heavier. And then understanding emerged. "I am the burden. I am carrying what was never meant to be held forever." He closed his eyes and began to forgive. Quietly, without drama. "I release you wherever you are." At once, the pressure softened. Light returned to his breath. New pathways opened before him as warmth touched his face and memories of kindness resurfaced. With each act of letting go, the pack grew lighter, until at last it felt weightless. Surrounded by the silk walls, he sat down and rested in stillness. "I see now," he realized. "I was not blocked by others. I was blocked by myself." As this clarity settled, his body began to rise. He floated gently above the maze, seeing how many others remained bent beneath invisible loads. With a single thought, he returned to the garden beside his teacher. "Master," he said softly, "I learned that my heaviness came from holding on, and my freedom came from releasing." The teacher smiled, neither confirming nor denying. And then he turned and walked away. The Buddha taught that holding anger is like grasping a burning coal. The pain belongs to the one who refuses to let go. This story reveals a simple truth. It is not the past that binds us, but our grip upon it. The pack is empty, yet it feels heavy because it is filled with unhealed emotion. We cling for many reasons. We confuse wounds with identity. We grow attached to familiar pain. We misunderstand forgiveness, believing it excuses harm rather than liberates the heart. Every unresolved memory becomes an unseen weight. A word spoken long ago. A betrayal never released. A voice from childhood still echoing within. Forgiveness, as Zen teaches, is not forgetting. It is choosing freedom over repetition. It is setting down what no longer serves. When the pack is released, lightness becomes possible. Not denial, not avoidance, but clarity. Tonight, as rest approaches, ask gently, What are you still carrying? And does it truly belong to you now? The Buddha reminded us that we deserve our own compassion. Freedom begins not with blame, but with kindness toward the self. Travel lightly. The path unfolds more easily that way. And now, let us move into the next story. A story of belief, of trust, and of how faith itself can shape destiny. This is the tale of the general and the coin that revealed the heart of truth. The coin struck the earth and came to rest, unmoving in the fine dust. It showed the face of victory. For a brief moment there was silence. Then the silence shattered into joy. A wave of sound rose from the soldiers, laughter and cries of relief echoing across the plain. Men who moments earlier stood rigid with fear now embraced one another, their shoulders relaxed, their eyes shining. The unseen had spoken. Heaven had answered. In that instant, doubt dissolved. The army moved forward not as a collection of frightened individuals, but as a single body filled with certainty. Their steps were firm, their strikes precise. Their hearts no longer hesitated. What followed seemed almost impossible. Against larger forces, against harsher terrain, they prevailed. Not through brute strength alone, but through unity of purpose and unwavering resolve. The battle ended swiftly, decisively, and the story of that victory would be carried forward for generations. As the field quieted and celebration spread through the camp, a young officer approached the general. His voice trembled with awe. "General," he said, "the sign was true. The coin revealed our fate exactly as you promised. Surely no human effort could overturn what heaven decided." The general smiled gently, not with pride, but with understanding. Reaching into his robe, he withdrew the coin and placed it into the officer's open palm. "No one can overturn destiny," he replied softly. The officer stared. His breath caught. Both sides of the coin bore the same image. Long ago, the Buddha taught that all that we become arises from the mind. Thought shapes direction. Intention shapes outcome. This story does not tell us that fate is illusion. It reveals something subtler. While we cannot command every circumstance, we profoundly influence how life unfolds through the quality of our belief and presence. The general understood that courage already lived within his soldiers. Skill already rested in their hands. Strength already waited in their bodies. What was missing was permission to trust themselves. The coin did not create victory. It removed fear. In Zen practice, this is known as right orientation. Not forcing reality to obey our wishes, but aligning our inner state so that our true capacity can emerge without obstruction. Consider your own life gently. How often do you decide the ending before the path has truly begun? How often does fear speak louder than possibility? How often do you abandon effort not because you lack ability, but because you lack belief? The two-sided coin symbolizes a quiet truth. When commitment is wholehearted, the path responds differently. Not magically, but naturally. Belief alone is not enough. The soldiers still marched. They still faced danger. But belief removed the inner fracture that weakens effort. Zen teaches us to balance intention with acceptance. We act fully, yet release attachment to outcome. We plant seeds without demanding the harvest. A wise teacher once said, "The untrained mind believes what it sees. The trained mind sees beyond what it believes." The general saw that the battlefield existed not only before his army, but within them. And by transforming that inner field, the outer one followed. Tonight, as you rest, Consider the challenges before you. Where might you already possess what you believe you lack? What inner conditions could you soften so your natural strength can arise? You cannot command destiny, but you can meet it with clarity, steadiness, and faith. As one candle lights another without losing its flame, belief shared multiplies strength. The general lit a quiet fire within his soldiers, and it carried them forward. Now, let us turn to another teaching, one that speaks not of victory, but of suffering, not of battle, but of perspective. This is the story of the salt and the lake. In a secluded monastery surrounded by gentle hills, there lived an elder teacher known for his calm and patience. Among his students was a young man whose days were filled with complaint. Each morning he arrived burdened with grievances. The noise disturbed his meditation. The floor caused his back to ache. Small discomforts accumulated until life itself felt unbearable. The master listened without interruption. But he knew words alone could not shift the student's view. One clear morning, sunlight spilling quietly through the room, the master spoke. "Please bring me a handful of salt from the kitchen." The student returned, puzzled, holding coarse white crystals in his palms. The master placed a small glass of water before him. "Add the salt," he said, "and drink." The student hesitated. "Master, that seems excessive." "Trust," came the reply. Reluctantly, the student obeyed. He swallowed and immediately recoiled. The bitterness overwhelmed his senses. "How does it taste?" the master asked. "Unbearable," the student said. "Far too bitter." The master nodded. "Come with me." Together they walked in silence until they reached a wide mountain lake, still and luminous beneath the sky. "Now," the master said gently, "place the salt here." The student scattered the crystals into the water and watched them disappear without trace. He cupped the lake water and sipped. It was cool, pure, refreshing. "Do you taste the salt?" the master asked. The student paused, attentive. "No," he replied softly. "Not at all." The master lowered himself beside the student, settling onto a smooth stone warmed by the sun. For a long moment, neither spoke. The lake breathed quietly before them. Then the elder reached out, taking the young man's hands in his own. His touch was steady, intimate, without urgency. "My dear one," he said softly, "the pain of living is like salt. It is neither excessive nor insufficient. It simply is. The quantity of pain in this world does not change. What changes is the space we give it." The student listened, his breath slowing. "When pain arises," the master continued, "the only freedom we truly possess is how we receive it. You may become a small vessel, where even a single grain overwhelms the whole. Or you may grow vast, like this lake, where the same salt dissolves without harm." He paused, letting the water speak. "Do not struggle to remove the salt, my friend. Enlarge yourself. Stop being a cup. Become water without edges." The Buddha taught that pain is unavoidable, yet suffering is a choice we unknowingly repeat. This teaching does not deny hardship. It reveals how suffering multiplies when awareness contracts. Our mind is not fixed in size. It can shrink until discomfort fills everything. Or it can open until difficulty becomes one experience among many. Why do we so often choose the smaller container? First, because pain narrows attention. It convinces us that what hurts now is all that exists. Second, because the mind tells stories, layering meaning upon sensation until a moment becomes a lifetime. Third, because comparison quietly whispers that life should have been easier, different, fairer. The lake does not deny the salt. It simply holds it without resistance. This is not passivity. It is wisdom. From spacious awareness, we respond instead of react. We act without panic. We meet difficulty without drowning in it. A Zen teacher once said that because everything changes, nothing is fixed in its suffering. From the lake's perspective, today's ache is tomorrow's echo. We grow larger through gentle practices. Stillness widens attention. Gratitude reveals what remains untouched by pain. Service reminds us that suffering is shared, not personal. Tonight, notice where you are holding your life tightly. Is your awareness clenched around a single difficulty? What happens if you allow the moment to widen, to include breath, warmth, sound, silence? The Buddha said that clarity brings peace. Not clarity without pain, but clarity spacious enough to contain it. When we become lakes instead of cups, pain does not disappear, but it no longer rules. It becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. And now, let us turn to another teaching, one that reveals the distance between performing wisdom and living it. This is the story of the head that wished to be severed. At a vast monastery nestled among ancient hills, the days unfolded according to rhythms older than memory. Before dawn, monks gathered in silence. Afterward, they dispersed into work, study, and service. One morning, the abbot wandered the grounds as he often did. His presence was quiet, yet unmistakable. Students never knew when a passing remark might reveal the depth of their understanding. Behind the meditation hall, he noticed a young monk sitting alone, apart from the others. "Brother," the abbot asked gently, "where have the virtuous ones gone?" The question seemed ordinary, yet it carried hidden weight. The monk looked up, confident. "They have gone to their duties," he replied. His tone suggested certainty. Virtue meant usefulness. Practice meant action. Without hesitation, the abbot reached into his robe and drew out a blade. Its edge caught the morning light. Then, with complete calm, he exposed his own neck and placed the knife into the monk's trembling hands. "My responsibilities are heavy," the abbot said peacefully. "If you would be so kind, please remove my head. It would make things much simpler." The monk froze. His understanding shattered. Unable to see beyond the surface of words, he dropped the blade and fled. The abbot retrieved the knife, returned it to his robe, and continued walking. His steps never changed. The Buddha once said it is better to walk the path well than to reach the destination quickly. This story points to the danger of mistaking ideas for realization. The mind gathers teachings easily, but insight requires surrender. The monk believed virtue lived somewhere else. In motion, in productivity, in correct appearance. The abbot revealed that true compassion sometimes requires cutting through identity itself, through roles, through concepts, through even our idea of spirituality. A Zen master once said that if you encounter a Buddha on the road, let him go. Not from disrespect, but from freedom. Any image we cling to becomes a wall. True wisdom leaves no trace to defend. And so, as you rest now, consider gently, where might you be holding ideas instead of presence? Where might understanding be asking to become lived experience? The path does not ask for perfection. Only honesty. Only openness. Only the courage to let go. The young monk's fear and his sudden escape revealed how deeply he remained bound to surface meaning. He heard the words of his teacher, yet could not feel the doorway hidden within them. His understanding lived in language, not in lived realization. Though his explanations were precise, they had not yet softened into wisdom. When faced with a moment that required surrender rather than certainty, his mind retreated. This is how conceptual clarity can still leave the heart untouched. Reflect quietly on your own way of helping others. When someone brings their suffering to you, do you respond with carefully shaped ideas, or with a presence that listens beneath words? Are you willing to let go of your spiritual identity, your sense of being right, in order to meet another exactly where they are? Ancient teachings remind us that virtue spoken is not the same as virtue embodied. The monk knew where the virtuous ones went and what they appeared to do. Yet when compassion required him to step beyond safety, he could not remain. In Zen practice, there is something known as great not knowing. It is not confusion, but humility. A gentle willingness to allow even treasured understandings to fall away. This openness is not doubt as fear, but doubt as spaciousness. It invites insight beyond the limits of thought. Awakening often begins where certainty ends. Can you allow your understanding to be incomplete, if doing so opens the door to deeper truth? Tonight, as you move through moments where others lean upon you, notice the difference between offering what seems helpful and responding from quiet clarity. Sometimes compassion does not add anything at all. Sometimes it removes what no longer serves. The Buddha pointed to this balance when he taught that caring for others and caring for oneself are not separate paths. When this truth is seen clearly, the boundary between helper and helped begins to dissolve, and action arises naturally, without strain. Now, allow your breath to soften as we enter another teaching. This one speaks of fearlessness, and of the strength that grows when resistance gently fades. It is the story of a warrior and a master who could not be shaken. During a time of unrest, when conflict swept across the land like a rising storm, armies moved from village to village, leaving uncertainty in their wake. At the sound of approaching soldiers, people gathered what they could and fled, seeking safety wherever it might be found. Homes were abandoned, streets emptied, and silence followed fear like a shadow. Yet in one quiet village, a single figure remained. An old Zen master continued his simple life in a small temple at the center of town. When the army arrived and found the village empty, the commanding general noticed smoke curling gently from the temple roof. Intrigued by this quiet defiance, he went to see who had chosen to stay. He expected weakness or ignorance. Instead, he found calm. The master was tending his garden, hands moving slowly, fully present with the soil and leaves. There was no urgency in his posture, no tension in his breath. The general, accustomed to obedience and fear, felt irritation rise within him. His power had always been reflected back through trembling and submission. This calm was unfamiliar. Drawing his sword, he shouted a threat meant to shatter resolve. He spoke of death, of how easily a life could be ended. Yet the master did not hurry. He did not stiffen. When he looked up, his gaze held the same gentle attention one might offer a passing guest. And he spoke quietly, saying that the general stood before someone who could meet death without hesitation. In that moment, something shifted. The general felt his anger loosen, replaced by awe. He had seen courage born of desperation and pride, but never this, a peace untouched by threat. Before such acceptance, the sword felt heavy and unnecessary. Slowly, it was returned to its sheath, and the general departed without another word. The village was spared, not through force or strategy, but through the presence of one who no longer feared loss. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things pass away. When this truth is not merely understood, but lived, a great freedom appears. Fear fades when there is nothing left to protect. Consider your own life. How much tension comes from holding tightly to what cannot remain? Reputation, comfort, certainty, all fragile by nature. The master's strength did not come from invulnerability, but from release. He did not seek harm, nor deny danger. He simply no longer resisted the truth of impermanence. One sentence spoken from such clarity carries more peace than many words shaped by fear. Tonight, as you rest, remember this quiet presence. Let acceptance soften what you hold too tightly. Within that release, a steady calm emerges, unshaken, unafraid. And now we continue onward, into a final teaching for this evening. A story that honors the wisdom of not knowing and the gentle honesty of silence. It is the meeting between an emperor and the Zen master Gudo. Master Gudo listened quietly as the emperor spoke, his voice steady with the confidence of lifelong command. "I carry a question that has followed humanity through the ages," the emperor said. "When an enlightened person dies, what becomes of him? Surely one who has realized the way must understand what lies beyond the final breath." The emperor anticipated an elevated response, perhaps words describing rebirth, karmic continuation, or the merging of awareness into boundless unity. He was ready for refined explanations that would soothe his curiosity about death's great unknown. Instead, Gudo met his gaze with complete calm and answered with gentle sincerity. "How could I know?" The words fell softly into the room. The emperor paused, unsettled. This teacher, honored throughout the land, had openly admitted not knowing what seemed to be a fundamental spiritual truth. "You surprise me," the emperor replied. "You are regarded as enlightened. Surely such understanding grants insight into these matters." Gudo answered without hesitation. "Yes," he said, "but I am alive, not dead." Within this brief exchange rests a deep teaching. True wisdom does not decorate itself with borrowed certainty. The Buddha once reflected that genuine understanding begins with recognizing the limits of knowledge. Spiritual maturity is marked not by grand answers, but by honest clarity. Gudo refused to speculate about experiences he had not lived, even before great authority. In doing so, he revealed a freedom greater than explanation. Notice how often we feel compelled to appear certain. We offer opinions on matters we have not fully examined. We speak confidently about outcomes we cannot foresee. The emperor believed awakening should include answers to every mystery. Yet Zen teaches that awakening changes our relationship with uncertainty, not our ability to eliminate it. What Suzuki Roshi called beginner's mind, or don't know mind, is not ignorance, but openness, a spacious awareness that does not rush to fill silence with conclusions. A living teacher understands living. What follows death remains beyond direct experience until it arrives. The Buddha encouraged investigation rooted in experience, not belief accepted out of reverence. Gudo's response points toward a quieter strength, the courage to rest within mystery without fear. How much mental strain arises from trying to resolve questions that cannot yet be answered? How much peace becomes possible when we allow ourselves to say, I do not know. As you lie here tonight, reflect gently. Where do you cling to certainty to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty? What might soften if you released the need to know everything in advance? Perhaps wisdom is not found in predicting what comes next, but in meeting this moment fully. The mystery of death is honored not by solving it, but by living honestly beside it. Now, let us drift onward to another teaching, one that reveals how attachment, when unchecked, can quietly transform love into harm. This is the story of the chrysanthemum garden. In the countryside of old Japan, where autumn air carried mist across manicured lands, there lived a nobleman of great wealth and influence. His estate was admired, yet it was the garden behind his home that held his heart. There, chrysanthemums flourished in perfect rows, their petals glowing in shades of gold, white, and deep violet. The nobleman devoted himself completely to these flowers. He studied them, protected them, and tended them with tireless care. But devotion slowly hardened into obsession. His attention drifted away from family and servants alike. Fear settled into the household, for even a small mistake near the garden could bring harsh punishment. What once inspired beauty now cultivated tension and resentment. One autumn afternoon, a loyal servant accidentally brushed against a prized flower, snapping its bloom. When the nobleman discovered the damage, fury overtook reason. The servant was imprisoned at once. Humiliated and despairing, the man resolved to end his life, believing death preferable to disgrace over a single flower. Word of this reached Zen Master Sengai, known for both insight and compassion. He arrived swiftly and prevented the act, but he saw clearly that saving one life would not heal the deeper wound. That night, as rain softened the earth and the chrysanthemum stood in full bloom, Sengai entered the garden unseen. With steady hands, he cut every flower to the ground. Hundreds fell silently into the darkness. The sound awakened the nobleman. Rushing outside with sword in hand, he confronted the figure standing amid the ruined garden, demanding to know what had been done. And here, the teaching continues, gently unfolding as we remain with the breath and let the mind grow quiet. Sengai remained standing quietly in the ruined garden, petals scattered at his feet like fallen snow. His voice was steady, free of judgment. Even the most cherished plants, he said softly, will grow wild and coarse if they are never cut back. In that instant, something inside the Baron collapsed. What he had worshipped was suddenly revealed as ordinary. What he had protected as sacred was seen clearly as transient. The veil of obsession lifted, and he recognized how tightly his mind had closed around beauty. That night marked a turning point. The garden was never replanted. The flowers were not replaced. The Buddha taught that clinging gives birth to suffering, and here the Baron learned this truth not through words, but through loss. When attachment tightens, affection hardens into ownership. What once brought joy begins to create fear. What once inspired care becomes a source of control. The Baron's love for the chrysanthemums had been sincere, yet distorted. His devotion crossed an unseen line, transforming appreciation into fixation. Beauty became burden. Care became command. Those around him suffered under the weight of something meant to inspire peace. This is how attachment works. The self seeks safety by holding tightly, trying to preserve what cannot be preserved. True love, in contrast, does not grasp. It delights without imprisoning. It protects without possessing. It allows growth, change, and even departure. Attachment fears loss because it confuses the object of love with the stability of identity. When that object threatens to change, the ego trembles. We see this pattern everywhere. Parents who cling so fiercely that their children cannot breathe. Partners who confuse love with surveillance. Seekers who turn spiritual practice into another measure of worth. Even success, health, or virtue can become a chrysanthemum garden when held too tightly. Sengai's act was severe, yet compassionate. Sometimes attachment cannot be loosened gently. Sometimes it must be interrupted. Life itself often performs this work for us through endings, disappointments, and change. These moments, painful as they feel, reveal what we were gripping without knowing. The Baron did not simply tend the garden differently. He let it go entirely. This teaches us that when attachment runs deep, space is sometimes the wisest medicine. Distance allows clarity. Silence restores balance. Only then can love return in a freer form. As you rest tonight, consider quietly, what in your life has become a garden guarded too fiercely? What do you love in a way that creates tension rather than ease? Can you imagine holding it with softer hands? The Buddha reminded us that life asks not how much we possess, but how gently we let go. And now we move onward to another teaching, one that reveals the quiet strength of fearlessness and compassion without conditions. This is the story of the thief and the Zen master. One evening, as twilight softened the edges of the world, Master Shikiri Kojin sat alone in his modest dwelling. A candle flickered nearby. Ancient verses flowed from his lips in a slow, steady rhythm. Each word rose and fell with the breath, filling the room with calm. Without warning, the door burst open. A man rushed inside, sword raised, eyes sharp with desperation. His clothes were torn, his body tense from fear and hunger. He had chosen this place believing peace meant weakness. "Give me your money, or I will kill you," the man demanded. Shikiri did not look up at first. His chanting continued for a few breaths more, unbroken, before he spoke gently. "Please do not interrupt my practice," he said. "If you need money, it is there in the drawer. Help yourself." The thief froze. No fear, no resistance, no plea, only quiet cooperation. Confused, he obeyed, collecting coins as the calm voice behind him continued its steady rhythm. As the man turned to leave, Shikiri spoke again. "Please do not take everything. I need some for my taxes tomorrow. Leave a little, won't you?" Something shifted. The thief returned part of the money without knowing why. Then, just as he reached the door, the master added one final sentence. "You have taken my gift," he said kindly, "but you forgot to say thank you." The sword trembled. The man's breath caught. He bowed awkwardly, whispered thanks, and fled into the night. Later, when the thief was captured and brought before the court, Shikiri was summoned. He did not accuse. He did not condemn. He simply said, "I gave him what he needed. He thanked me." At those words, something broke open inside the man in chains. Not shame, not fear, but recognition. For the first time, he had encountered compassion without demand. After his release, he returned to Shikiri and asked to learn. Over time, through patience and trust, the thief transformed. The Buddha taught that hatred never ends through hatred, but only through love. This is the eternal law. As you drift toward sleep, feel this truth settle gently. Force feeds force. Fear multiplies fear. But love, offered freely, has the power to end cycles we believe are endless. Rest now in that knowing. When someone meets you with sharp words, impatience, or demand, what happens inside you first? Most people react before they are aware of reacting, either tightening inward or striking back. Watch closely what those reflexes create. Does the body soften or does it brace? Does the moment open or does it harden? Shikiri's response reveals what Zen calls right action, behavior that arises from clarity rather than habit. His calm did not come from ignoring danger. It arose from seeing clearly. He recognized that the thief's violence was born from hunger, fear, and despair, not from some fixed evil nature. By refusing to meet aggression with resistance, he dissolved the role of enemy before it could take shape. In Zen practice, this is known as fearless openness, the courage to remain undefended without becoming careless. This does not mean inviting harm or denying reality. It means trusting a deeper intelligence than reflex. When we respond from presence rather than fear, we create space for transformation. The Buddha reminded us that what matters most is not how much we possess, but how we live, how we love, and how freely we let go. Shikiri lived fully in that moment, offered kindness without condition, and released attachment to safety and ownership alike. Think gently of those who disturb your peace, the tense coworker, the sharp-tongued relative, the stranger whose anger spills into your path. What would it feel like to meet them without mirroring their agitation? Not agreeing, not submitting, but standing quietly rooted in your own steadiness. Between stimulus and response, there is a small opening. In that opening lives choice. Tonight, as thoughts slow and the breath deepens, remember the master who treated a robber as a guest. Remember that peace does not require winning. Sometimes the strongest response is stillness. One word spoken from calm can outweigh 1,000 shouted defenses. Love, when it is steady, reshapes situations that force never can. And now, let us drift into another teaching, one that speaks softly about desire and contentment. This is the journey of the stone cutter. High in the mountain villages, where narrow paths wind through pine and mist, lived a simple stone cutter. Each morning before sunrise, he lifted his tools onto his shoulders and climbed toward the quarries. As he worked, the sound of his hammer echoed through the valleys, accompanied by old songs passed down through generations. His home was small, his belongings few, yet his heart was light. He wanted nothing beyond the rhythm of his days, the strength of his hands, and the beauty of the mountains that surrounded him. One day, he was summoned to work on the estate of a wealthy noble. When he arrived, his breath caught. Tall columns of polished stone, wide gardens shaped by careful hands, fountains glistening in the sun. For the first time, a quiet dissatisfaction stirred. If only I were rich, he thought. Then life would be easier. A whisper moved through the stone. Your wish is granted. That evening, his humble hut had vanished, replaced by a grand mansion. At first, joy filled him. He rested where once he labored. But soon, as summer heat pressed down, he noticed the king passing by in shaded comfort. I wish I were king, he thought, and instantly found himself carried in royal splendor. Yet even kings feel the sun. The heat grew unbearable. I wish I were the sun itself. And he became light and fire, powerful beyond measure, until thick clouds rose and dimmed his brilliance. Then I wished to be a cloud. As rain, he felt mighty again, until his fall was stopped by a great stone. A rock stronger than all this. I wish to be a rock. Standing immovable upon the mountainside, he felt invincible until he heard the sound of chipping. Below him stood a man, small and steady, cutting stone with patient rhythm. I wish to be that man again. And so he returned to his former life. But now, as his hammer rang against the rock and cool air brushed his skin, something was different. Gratitude filled the spaces where desire once stirred. His song rose again, deeper and fuller, because he had learned what could not be gained through wishing. The Buddha taught that contentment is the greatest wealth. Desire keeps us circling, always becoming something else, never arriving. Peace comes not from changing form, but from recognizing that what we seek is often already here. Rest with that understanding now. Let wanting loosen its grip. Let this moment be enough. Why do our hearts keep reaching for another version of life, another form, another promise? We quietly convince ourselves that peace waits just beyond the next change. Yet each fulfilled wish gives birth to a new longing, and the mind moves again, never quite arriving. This is the quiet restlessness the stone-cutter's path reveals so clearly. It is not the world that keeps changing, but our belief that happiness lives somewhere else. Look gently at your own patterns. You may think, I will feel at ease once I advance in my work, only to discover new pressures waiting there. You may imagine that greater comfort or security will finally calm the mind, yet soon the weight of maintaining those gains replaces the joy of receiving them. Each summit reveals another slope beyond it. A Zen teacher once reflected that we are already whole, and yet life still invites us to grow. This is not a contradiction, but a soft truth pointing toward balance. Contentment does not mean resisting change, and growth does not require rejecting what already is. The stone cutter did not awaken by becoming something greater, but by returning to himself with clear eyes and an open heart. His hands shaped the same stones. The mountains stood as they always had. But his awareness had shifted. What once felt ordinary now felt complete. This is the essence of true contentment, not changing the experience, but changing the way we meet it. This evening, as the mind drifts toward what is missing or imagined, see if you can rest where you are. Listen for the quiet song that emerges when effort softens and comparison fades. There is a gentle richness here, often overlooked. A simple truth whispered by the wise. Natural ease is the deepest wealth, while endless wanting creates its own poverty. The most profound transformation is not becoming someone else, but recognizing the quiet completeness already present beneath striving. And now, as we continue this journey together, we turn toward a story that reveals wisdom through lightness, and how suffering can arise when we cling too tightly to seriousness. This is the tale of a monk who found his greatest teacher in an unexpected sound. Long ago, in a secluded mountain monastery, there lived a young monk devoted with unwavering intensity. Before dawn each day, he rose to meditate, his posture firm, his body unmoving, his determination sharp as stone. He studied the teachings with relentless focus, memorizing passages, analyzing meanings, and engaging in debate with great precision. Others admired his discipline, yet often noticed the heaviness that followed him like a shadow. His devotion was sincere, but joy rarely touched his face. One cool morning, while studying a teaching on emptiness, he encountered a passage that unsettled him deeply. The words appeared clear, yet their meaning slipped away the moment he tried to grasp it. Each interpretation collapsed into uncertainty. Resolute, he carried his question to the elder teacher. The master sat quietly in a sunlit room, light drifting across the wooden floor, the air calm and spacious. With deep respect, the monk presented his confusion, reciting the passage carefully and explaining his struggle to understand its meaning. The teacher listened without interruption, his eyes soft, his presence steady. Then something unexpected occurred. A smile appeared on the master's face. It widened, deepened, and soon transformed into gentle laughter, which grew and grew until his whole body shook with mirth. Tears formed at the corners of his eyes as the laughter filled the room like wind through trees. The monk stood frozen. This response had not been imagined. Where he expected instruction, there was only laughter. Without explanation, the master rose and left the room, his laughter fading down the corridor. For 3 days, the monk could not find peace. The sound of that laughter echoed within him. His meals lost their taste. Meditation brought no stillness. Sleep came in fragments. His mind spun with questions and wounded pride. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he returned to the master. This time, words came not from study, but from distress. He spoke of his confusion, his pain, his longing to understand why his earnest seeking had been met with laughter. The master looked at him kindly and invited him to sit. After a quiet pause, he spoke gently. "My friend," he said, "do you know what troubles you most? You suffer more than a clown." The words startled the monk. He protested, speaking of his dedication, his sacrifices, his devotion to the path. How could such effort be compared to something so light? The master smiled and explained. A clown delights when others laugh. Their joy becomes his fulfillment. But you, when laughter appears, become disturbed and closed. Which heart is freer? At that moment, clarity dawned. The monk saw how tightly he clung to being serious, to being recognized as sincere. The laughter had not been ridicule. It had been joy, the natural expression of insight beyond words. And then, softly at first, the monk began to laugh. At his rigidity, at his striving, at the gentle humor of the path itself. His laughter joined the memory of the masters, and in that shared ease, understanding arose without effort. A quiet teaching revealed itself. When we brighten another's path, our own way becomes lighter as well. This story reminds us that our reactions mirror the state of our inner world. When joy unsettles us, it is often because something within is holding too tightly. Zen invites us to loosen that grip, to meet life with openness, and to allow wisdom to arrive not only through silence, but sometimes through laughter drifting gently into the stillness of the night. The young monk's suffering arose from his deep attachment to being seen as a serious and capable practitioner. Because of this investment in identity, he could not receive the teaching that arrived through laughter. This reveals another subtle source of suffering, our narrow ideas about how wisdom should appear. We often expect spiritual insight to come dressed in solemn language, careful explanations, and familiar forms. We imagine that truth must arrive quietly, formally, and with recognizable authority. Yet awakening frequently enters through unexpected openings. It may come as a burst of laughter, a child's simple question, the ringing of a bell, or a moment so ordinary that it is easily overlooked. How many teachings have passed us by simply because they did not match our expectations? A casual remark from someone we consider less experienced may carry the precise understanding we need. An irritating situation or a seemingly trivial person may be life's way of offering instruction. But when wisdom does not wear the costume we expect, we turn away. A Zen teacher once observed that the beginner's mind is wide and spacious, while the expert's mind often becomes confined. The monk's knowledge, once a support, had hardened into a barrier. His certainty about what teaching should look like prevented him from recognizing the depth being offered through joy. This story gently asks us to look inward. Are we truly seeking understanding, or are we seeking recognition for our seriousness and effort? Are we open to truth in any form, or do we demand that it confirm what we already believe? The master's laughter was not dismissive. It was an expression of the living Dharma itself, playful, free, and beyond rigid logic. It pointed to the natural joy that arises when insight is no longer constrained by ego. Tonight, if you encounter responses that surprise or unsettle you, someone laughing when you expected gravity, someone lighthearted when you hoped for depth, pause gently. There may be a teaching hidden there, waiting for openness rather than control. Wisdom, like a flame, is not diminished by being shared. Joy multiplies when it flows freely. The master's laughter did not weaken the teaching, it celebrated its boundless vitality. And the monk discovered that joy could be embraced rather than resisted. As we continue along this quiet path, we now turn to a cautionary story, one that reveals the danger of spiritual pride. This is the tale of the clever monkey. Long ago, in ancient China, the Prince of Wu set out on a pleasure journey to a mountain famous for its wild beauty and playful monkeys. Surrounded by guards and attendants, he approached the forest with the ease of one accustomed to obedience. When the monkeys sensed the human presence, panic rippled through the trees. They scattered upward, leaping into branches and hiding among leaves. The forest grew still, save for the rustle of movement fading into silence. All but one. One monkey remained unmoved, swinging effortlessly from limb to limb. He leapt, turned, and danced through the air, his movements graceful and precise. He seemed unconcerned by danger, displaying his agility with confidence and flair. The prince watched, irritation rising. This small creature showed no fear, no respect. Its ease felt like mockery. Determined to assert authority, the prince drew his bow and released an arrow. To everyone's astonishment, the monkey caught it mid-flight as lightly as one catches a falling leaf. He examined it briefly and tossed it aside. Humiliated and enraged, the prince ordered his men to attack. Arrows filled the air. This time, the monkey could not evade them all. Struck again and again, he fell lifeless to the forest floor. Turning to his companion Yen Pui, the prince spoke coldly. This is what happens to those who display their cleverness. Do not rely on talent when dealing with others. Yen Pui took these words deeply into his heart. When they returned home, he reflected on his own reputation and abilities. He saw how pride could quietly grow even within accomplishment. Seeking freedom from this danger, he became the student of a humble sage. He set aside displays of intelligence, renounced comforts, and learned to hide anything that made him stand out. Over time, he became so ordinary, so unremarkable, that people no longer knew how to judge him. And yet, something profound radiated from his presence. Without display or claim, others felt drawn to his quiet depth. True wisdom, it seemed, did not announce itself. This story reveals a subtle trap on the spiritual path. When insight or ability becomes part of identity, it hardens into separation. What should dissolve the ego can instead strengthen it. Like the monkey, we may develop genuine clarity, calm, or compassion. But when we cling to these as proof of specialness, they become the very cause of our downfall. Authentic progress grows quieter as it deepens. True understanding naturally expresses itself as humility because it sees the interwoven nature of all things. The monkey's mistake was believing his cleverness made him exceptional, rather than seeing it as a passing expression of universal life. Yen Pui discovered that by becoming nothing special, he touched others more deeply than any display could. As you rest now, see if you can release the need to be advanced, wise, or different. Let yourself be simple. Let awareness be ordinary. Peace arises not from proving wisdom, but from letting go of the one who wants to appear wise. The deepest stillness comes when even the desire for stillness is released. And so, gently, we move forward into another teaching, one that shows how balance can remain untouched by praise or blame. The first traveler moved through life carrying a landscape of tension within him, because his mind was already crowded with suspicion and resentment. Every place he entered appeared harsh and unwelcoming. The Zen master did not describe the town itself. He simply reflected the man's inner world back to him. The second traveler carried a very different inner climate. His heart was open, his expectations gentle, and his attention naturally settled on kindness and connection. To him, the same town appeared warm and full of possibility. Again, the master described not the marketplace, but the mind that would walk through it. This teaching reveals something quietly profound. We are not passive observers of reality. Moment by moment, the mind participates in shaping what we experience. Two people can stand in the same place, hear the same sounds, meet the same faces, and yet live in entirely different worlds. Buddha taught that the mind precedes all things. What we habitually think becomes the lens through which life is seen. When the mind is steeped in blame, even neutral events feel threatening. When the mind rests in goodwill, ordinary moments shimmer with meaning. This does not mean that suffering is imagined or that injustice does not exist. Rather, it points to the added layer of suffering created by the stories we tell ourselves. Pain may arise naturally, but resentment, bitterness, and despair are often cultivated unconsciously. The first man's world felt hostile because his inner dialogue expected hostility. He noticed every slight, magnified every inconvenience, and overlooked moments of simple kindness. His mind confirmed its own assumptions again and again. The second man's mind was trained differently. He noticed generosity, cooperation, and small gestures of care. His expectations invited connection, and connection appeared. Zen teaches that this is not coincidence. It is the natural functioning of awareness shaped by habit. What we attend to grows stronger. What we repeatedly believe becomes familiar. And what is familiar begins to feel like truth. Tonight, as your body softens and your breath slows, you may gently reflect on this teaching. What kind of inner town do you carry with you? When you enter a new situation, do you arrive armored or open? Expecting threat or allowing curiosity? Notice without judgment. There is no need to force change. Awareness itself begins the transformation. Just as the Zen master did not argue with either traveler, you need not argue with your mind. Simply see it clearly. Over time, clarity softens habit. and softened habit reshapes experience. This story reminds us that peace is not found by arranging perfect outer conditions. It is cultivated by tending the inner field from which perception arises. When the mind is gentle, the world feels gentler. When the heart is closed, even abundance feels empty. As Buddha taught, the world is led by mind, made by mind, shaped by mind. When one speaks or acts with a troubled mind, suffering follows like a shadow. When one speaks or acts with a peaceful mind, happiness follows like a faithful companion. As you rest now, allow the breath to guide you inward. There is nothing to fix, nothing to prove. Simply observe the tone of your thoughts as clouds drifting across a wide sky. And gently remember, wherever you go tomorrow, your inner landscape will arrive first. Tend to it kindly, and the path ahead will unfold with greater ease. Let us continue our journey with another quiet teaching, one that reveals how patience and trust allow wisdom to ripen in its own time. The second traveler revealed a very different habit of mind, one that naturally assumed goodwill and searched for connection rather than threat. His awareness was tuned toward cooperation, small gestures of kindness, and the quiet possibility of shared humanity. You can see this difference everywhere in daily life. Two people may sit at neighboring desks, hear the same conversations, receive the same instructions, and yet live in entirely different emotional worlds. One experiences rivalry, manipulation, and tension. The other discovers guidance, teamwork, and room to grow. The environment appears identical, but the inner lens reshapes everything. This does not suggest that circumstances are irrelevant or that hardship can be dissolved by positive thinking alone. Rather, it points to the subtle yet powerful role of habitual interpretation. The mind selects, emphasizes, and colors experience long before we consciously reflect on it. A Zen saying reminds us, wherever you go, there you are. We travel with our inner climate, and it quietly influences every encounter. The master understood that no change of location could bring peace to the first traveler while his inner storms remained untouched. Wherever he settled, the same disappointments would follow him, wearing new faces but telling the same story. This insight gently challenges how we approach change. When discomfort arises, we often rush to alter the outer world, new jobs, new relationships, new places. Yet if the patterns of perception remain the same, the scenery changes, but the suffering repeats. The same principle also carries great hope. When we nurture qualities like appreciation, patience, and sincere curiosity, our experience gradually transforms. The world itself does not suddenly become perfect, but we become more capable of seeing its quiet goodness. Tonight, as your thoughts slow, you might softly observe the lens you often use. Do you arrive in situations expecting resistance, or allowing space for understanding? Do you scan for what is missing, or notice what is already offered? The Buddha taught that the mind shapes all experience. What we repeatedly think, we repeatedly become. True change begins not by rearranging life, but by refining the quality of attention we bring to whatever life presents. And so, we turn gently to another story, one that reveals the difference between appearing wise and actually carrying light within. This is the quiet teaching of the blind man and his lantern. One evening, as darkness settled over the village, a blind man prepared to return home after a long, pleasant visit with a close friend. They had shared tea, soft conversation, and the ease that arises between trusted companions. Now the night air cooled, and it was time to walk the familiar winding streets. Seeing how dark the roads had become, the friend felt a stir of concern. "Please," he said kindly, "take my lantern with you. The paths are narrow, and others may not see you in the darkness." The blind man smiled gently. "Why would I need a lantern? You know I cannot see. These streets live in my body. My steps remember them well." The friend nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps the light is not for you to see, but for others to see you, so they will not collide with you in the dark." This made sense. Though he lacked sight, the blind man understood how others moved through the world. He accepted the lantern with gratitude. It was simple and delicate, paper stretched over bamboo, a small candle glowing softly within. Though he could not see the flame, he felt its warmth and trusted that it announced his presence to others. He stepped into the night calmly, the lantern swinging gently at his side, each footfall confident and familiar. But after only a short distance, he suddenly collided with another traveler. The impact startled them both. The lantern lurched, and the blind man steadied himself. "Why are you not watching where you go?" he exclaimed, irritation rising. "Can you not see this lantern? I carry it so people will avoid me." The other man paused, then laughed softly. "My friend," he said, "why have you not lit the candle? Your lantern is dark." The blind man reached out, his fingers exploring the frame. The flame had gone out long ago, though he had not noticed. He had been walking through darkness, believing he carried light, holding only an empty form. This story quietly reveals a deep truth. It is possible to carry the shape of wisdom without its living flame. We gather teachings, repeat beautiful words, and surround ourselves with spiritual forms, yet remain unaware when the light within has gone out. The blind man was sincere. His intention was kind. But sincerity alone did not produce illumination. Only a living flame could do that. Zen teaches the difference between possessing the container and sustaining the fire. Books, concepts, and practices are only vessels. Without direct awareness, they illuminate nothing. As you rest now, you may gently ask yourself, is the lantern warm within? Or am I carrying only its shape? There is no judgment here, only a quiet invitation to notice, and in noticing, to begin lighting the flame. Yet sincere intention alone cannot replace the simple truth of a flame that is actually burning. This is the quiet challenge that lives at the heart of every spiritual path. Not the wish to be wise, not the appearance of understanding, but the steady cultivation of direct experience that allows wisdom to breathe. Zen Master Dogen once taught that to study the Buddha way is to study the self, and to study the self is, eventually, to forget the self. The lantern we carry so carefully often represents our idea of who we believe ourselves to be. A person who understands, the person who knows, a person who has arrived. As long as we are occupied with protecting this image, the living flame of insight remains unattended. The traveler who collided with the blind man was not harsh in his honesty. At times, truth reaches us through contact, through friction, through moments that interrupt our assumptions. Often, it is another who helps us see what we cannot feel ourselves, that the candle has quietly gone out, that we have been moving forward on borrowed light, relying on past realizations instead of present awareness. You may recognize this gently within your own life. Moments when words of calm are spoken while the body is tight with unease. Moments when guidance is offered even as the heart remains uncertain. moments when wisdom is performed, but not yet fully lived. These are not failures. They are invitations. They signal that it is time to pause, to return, to relight the flame. Discovering that the lantern is dark does not end the journey. It begins it anew. The lantern itself is not the problem. It was always meant to hold something alive. Again and again, this pattern appears in our lives. In work, in relationships, in practice. We learn the language, we master the forms, we wear the robes of experience. And yet, sometimes, the warmth that once guided us has faded. The teacher who no longer listens. The guide who has stopped learning. The practitioner whose devotion has hardened into routine. Each still carries a lantern, beautiful, familiar, but dim. The Buddha offered a gentle reminder. Better than countless empty phrases is a single word born of presence. One moment of true awareness illuminates more clearly than years of unexamined knowledge. A small flame, when real, guides the way more surely than the most ornate vessel without light. Zen practice asks us quietly, again and again, is the candle burning now? Are these words arising from experience or memory? Is this action rooted in awareness or habit? Is there warmth here, or only the shape of warmth? Candles naturally flicker. They fade. They are touched by wind. This is not a mistake. This is their nature. The practice is not to keep the flame perfect, but to notice when it has gone out, and to relight it with humility, without pretense. Tonight, as you soften into rest, you may gently observe the lanterns you carry. Which ones glow with living understanding, and which are simply being held out of habit? There is no need for judgment, only honesty. Every dark lantern is an open doorway back to genuine clarity. The Buddha taught that three things cannot remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Eventually, darkness reveals itself through contact with the world. But we need not wait for collision. We can tend the inner flame now, with care, with patience, with kindness, knowing that when it burns, it lights not only our own path, but gently guides others as well. As this shared reflection draws towards stillness, notice how the calm you feel was never something you had to acquire. It was something you remembered. The quiet you are touching does not belong to these words alone. It lives naturally within your awareness, waiting without urgency. The Buddha reminded us that peace does not arrive from elsewhere. It unfolds from within. Rest with that understanding. Serenity does not require special conditions, nor rare experiences. It grows from the simple act of being present with this breath, this moment. All the teachings of tonight have pointed toward one gentle truth. Suffering loosens when resistance softens. Freedom appears when we stop clinging and begin seeing. Even if thoughts wander, even if the body shifts, the seeds planted here remain. They rest quietly in the soil of your being, ready to nourish you whenever you return. As sleep approaches, remember that these teachings have not led you elsewhere. They have brought you fully here. Feel the breath deepen. Feel the mind settle. Feel the weight you were carrying quietly set down. True understanding is not hidden in distant places or ancient texts alone. It shines through ordinary awareness, through noticing, through presence. Tonight, you have touched that simplicity. As you drift back into the rhythm of rest, carry not the words, but the stillness they revealed. May this gentle clarity remain with you, in light and shadow, in ease and difficulty. The peace you discovered tonight was never lost. It was waiting patiently for you to come home. Sleep well.